You'll be the prince and I'll be the princess. It's a LARP story, baby, just say yes. Welcome to the first episode of Season 3, everyone! Allow me to start this by asking a simple question. Want to do a single game of LARP? No? Too short? What about 2 or 3? Still too short? How about a whole bunch of games and we can call it a campaign? Sounds good? Good then, because I'm going to show you how to LARP a whole campaign with a story! As I mentioned in one of my previous videos, it's easier for people to beat off other people if they've got a good story to go along with it. Nobody wants to beat off a room full of men without context. Unless you're into gel blasters, sports, or video games, I guess. I don't judge. Point is, we all need a reason to do stuff. We want it, we crave it, we need it. Why am I storming a keep? Why am I fighting a dragon? Why do we exist in a world where death is inevitable, where the promise of an afterlife is uncertain? Too existential? Let's pull it back a bit. For the more pragmatic LARPer who only wants to win and doesn't care about the story, you should still pay attention since they can give you a boost in power. One scenario might involve players gathering some sort of holy artifact to defeat an evil overlord that gives you a buff when holding said artifacts. Generally speaking, when making a campaign, there's continuity involved. Whether it's power-giving loot, a reoccurring enemy, or some sort of other mechanic or area that can be destroyed and or developed based on player actions. For balance reasons, sometimes these buffs are limited to specific days or scenarios, but if they're permanent, there's usually a way for other players to wrest control away from the original holders. The main issue of continuity is what happens when certain key players don't attend an event because they caught the flu or something. If a player who just runs around hitting things doesn't turn up, it's not too much of an issue. But if a character who got the legendary amulet last time, that's needed to defeat the big bad evil guy, doesn't turn up, then we're in a bit of a pickle. But not really. When something like this happens, we can do one of 3 things. The first is to ignore the fact that they're missing and create a stand-in. Maybe give someone else a magic amulet that looks slightly different, but say it's the same one in universe and continue with the game. Your second option is to ignore it even harder and put everyone through a side quest until the original amulet guy shows up. And the third thing is kind of my favorite from a thematic sense, but problematic in its own way. And that is to let the bad guy win. Now, unless the bad guy's plan is to literally kill everyone and stop them from respawning forever, the story can continue. Remember, a story doesn't have to be victory after victory after victory. It can also have its downs, terrible lows, and defeats. Note, this only works if the missing player would be okay with this, and if the other people are nice and not the sort to get mad at the absent player out of character. And I just realized I've only covered PvE type stuff. Quickly speaking, to have a PvP type campaign, instead of having an overarching villain, just have an overarching reward, whether it be loot, land, or prestige, to name a few. Said campaigns don't have to be initiated by the organizers, but instead by the players themselves, and of course there's nothing stopping multiple campaigns happening in the same game at the same time. That about covers it, I hope. So now you know how to do story stuff and campaigns in LARP. You're welcome. Want a clue for the next topic of the next episode? Well, let's just say it involves people who scream a lot. Savage LARP. Did somebody break your heart? Looking like an angel, but you're savage LARP. I got banned from my LARP for having weapons that didn't pass the safety test. Weapons like these guns. So strong. So get ready, brother, because I'm gonna show you how to LARP with these pythons. You know what's great? Having a hobby that doesn't need you to be fit and strong to succeed in. A hobby like video games, board games, or even a LARP where you can just buy victory by wearing lots of armor to increase your toughness. Though that strategy might not work if other, more tougher, fitter, more handsome people also buy a ton of armor. In all seriousness though, you don't have to be fit or even run around that much to win at LARP. You just have to have fun by role-playing, tell a story, or sneak around waiting for the perfect time to strike those stupid, handsome... But if you're a barbarian, then your job is to scream and smash everything in sight. The louder you are, the more intimidation points you get. That's right, we're talking about savage muscle men, or women, Amazons, or protein knights if you prefer. Whatever your pronoun, you're not here to think or talk, you're here to hit stuff hard. Within the safety limits of your LARP, of course. The barbarian is what you want to play if you don't want to do any of that pesky roleplay stuff, and don't want to spend too much money on expensive metal armor. I mean, that foam axe you got was expensive enough, and you don't need to mortgage out your house again. Wait, what do you mean savage, unarmored people can still roleplay? Alright, I'll acknowledge it. You can be a noble, primal, and shamanistic roleplay kind of person. You can be superstitious, even by the standards of someone who lives in a world filled with literal magic. I mean, you can even play without armor to boast how skillful you are in combat, giving yourself a purposeful handicap for a larger challenge. Or it's an excuse for when you lose against someone with more hit points. Either way. Now, the odd thing with barbarians is that in many systems you don't get many, if any, bonuses for being a non-armored martial type. So this means you either turn into cannon fodder for the plate mail wearing master race, or you turn into the real version of Neo, basically dodging everyone's swords and axes and arrows in slow motion. So now you know how to be an unarmored tough guy in LARP. You're welcome. Next week we're gonna keep talking about getting muscles, but in a different way. Can you guess the topic? So strong. You are the face of a powerful LARP. So that's my opinion.
Hey, you know what would be cool? A gym where you get to dress up and run around to get fit and pretend to be a wizard, and then you...
Stop. That's a LARP. You're just describing a LARP. So get ready, because I'm going to show you how to LARP healthily. Last week we talked about muscly barbarians, so this week we're discussing how to become muscly barbarians, or muscly knights, rogues, wizards, or whatever. Now, I know there are many ways to LARP that don't involve you being physically active, or at least active enough to have sore muscles by the end of the game, but for those of you who run around swinging foam swords for hours on end while wearing metal armor in the blazing heat, this episode is for you. The first thing you should remember is to stretch. Getting a cramp sucks, and stretching can help with that. Don't forget to hydrate either, but don't go too crazy. Some side effects of having too much water include throwing up if you run too much, having to pee while wearing a full set of metal armor, and, well, those are the main ones, I guess. Now, most LARPs are a weekly thing with sessions lasting hours. While this can help keep you active, this won't necessarily make you fit. Exercise is good, but it needs to be done at least several times a week, not just once per week. So if you're relying on LARP specifically to build muscle or increase your endurance, you're going to be in it for a long time. Now that said, if you're doing nothing else physical for the rest of the week, this is still a good way to get out and move around. So don't take what I say as condemnation of LARP as a form of exercise, but rather that it's a good, healthy addition to an active lifestyle. If your LARP literally has daily or nightly sessions where you run around, then that's a whole different story, making it at least a great way to work on your cardio. Now, unlike the gym, LARPs might have you wear heavy, sometimes restrictive exercise clothes that we personally call armor. The average suit of armor can weigh anywhere between 20 to 60 kilos, or for all you non-metric peasants, roughly 44 to 120 pounds. Despite all this weight, it's not as heavy as you might think it is. If you have one shopping bag filled to the brim, that might be a tough haul. But if you have two shopping bags with half the groceries between them, then that's going to be a much easier trip to the car. So think of wearing armor like having a bunch of shopping bags strapped all over your body. It's not an issue of lifting at this point, but of lasting. Your endurance does take a bit of a hit, but if you minimize your movements and rest when you need to, you'll get through the LARP without much collapsing. Physical activity can be difficult, but if you stick with it, you'll find it getting easier and easier every time. And hey, if you really want to metagame and be super optimized, just work out outside of LARP. Go run to increase your speed, lift weights so your arms don't get so tired when you swing your sword, eat healthy food, and hydrate often to increase your overall health to outlast your enemies. Then invite your LARP group over to the gym to get free months of membership, work out together to keep each other motivated, continue to eat right, rest well, get buff, and don't skip leg day and dominate the battlefield. So now you know about fitness in LARP. You're welcome. Next week we're going to keep talking about getting strong, but in a different way. Can you guess the topic? We're no strangers to LARP. You know the rules, and so do I. So you know how we just had the static word-based disclaimer that I just sung over? Well, consider this a second verbal disclaimer specific to this specific episode. Now that I exploited the social construct of a disclaimer to avoid liability, get ready because I'm going to tell you all about the exploits in power gaming that you can do in LARP. Starting at a very basic level of power gaming that's so basic that it's barely even considered power gaming, we have armor. In most video games and tabletop games, armor reduces the amount of damage you take, but calculating that sort of thing in real time with human brains is near impossible for the average smooth brain larper, so instead, we universally just say, armor adds hit points. So as I've mentioned in previous videos before, LARP therefore is a pay-to-win game. The more money you pay, the more HP you have. The more HP you have, the bigger advantage you have over those who don't. Next up, pretending that you're more powerful than you actually are is a great way of stalling for time. Nobody wants to be hit with an instant death spell, for example, so as long as you don't actually go through with casting it, nobody can accuse you of using a spell you don't actually have. And hey, if they doubt and argue with you, then they're spending that time arguing instead of killing you anyways, which is a win-win if you're trying to stall for time. Some spells require you to chant out some words before casting them, like, "By the mystical arcane winds, I cast Fireball!" That's 5 words plus the words, "I cast Fireball." Now all that chanting gives your opponent time to either dodge, run away, or kill you before you can finish casting the spell. However, if you exploit the system and say things like, "Wait, I cast Fireball," that's me just saying the word wait 5 times, which is part of the chant, plus saying I cast Fireball. Rules as written, it technically counts. Usually when LARPs talk about two-handed weapons, they have a rule forbidding you from wielding a second weapon or a shield in your offhand. However, sometimes they don't specify the fact that you need to use both hands on said weapon. Wielding a greatsword in one hand while standing sideways decreases your frontal hit profile, increases your reach slightly, and frees up your other hand to use potions, items, or insulting gestures. Real swords in real life this size are heavy, but foam swords not so much. Another exploit is to pretend to die. Now, for the most part, people will stop attacking you when there's no point in attacking you, especially if there are other more pressing matters to attend to. And once they stop paying attention to you, you can always sneak attack them. The final exploit is that most LARPs that are safety conscious don't allow you to hit people's heads. So in these cases, crouch down or even kneel. Better yet, use a shield to cover the rest of your body until only your head is showing, forcing your enemies to hit you in the noggin and potentially get penalized for it. Oh, and just in case you forgot, please rewatch the disclaimer at the start, including the verbal disclaimer. So now you know about exploits in power gaming and LARP. You're welcome. Next week we're talking about the power of music. Can you guess the topic? Exploits and power gaming isn't always a good thing unless your specific community embraces it. Not only that, but exploits by their very nature are also specific to each LARP and rule set. The advice I'm about to show you is less advice and more warnings and observations. In fact, some of these tricks might get you banned, reprimanded, and even hurt the community with toxicity, so use them at your own risk. Actually, no, don't even try it. I am telling you in black and white language to not use exploits and power gaming at your LARP. This episode isn't a guide to LARP anymore, this is a warning. There are unwritten rules that forbid these kinds of shenanigans. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in LARP with you. Martial prowess, magical talent, and sheer cunning are all traits you'll want to see in an average adventurer, but sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes their spirits flag, sometimes their motivations become unmotivated, sometimes their enthusiasm needs a boost. Sometimes we need background music. This is where the power ballad begins. This is when the bard power slides onto the stage. Either that or create a, wait for it, a distraction. Get them! Kill them all! This is where I'm going to show you how to be a bard in LARP. Historically speaking, bards or instrument players have always had a place on the battlefield, sometimes to provide a beat to march to, sometimes to give orders over the din of battle, and sometimes just to style all over the opposition. Scientifically speaking, you're at least 20% more effective in battle when listening to rock music. The obvious downside, however, is if you can hear the music, so can they, and they'll get 20% stronger as well. Now, most bards have 2 different roles in LARP. The first is to entertain the masses, helping to immerse people into the atmosphere of the fantasy. This style of bard is there to flex their musical muscles, to roleplay and enchant everyone with their magical notes. Sometimes literally with magic. Well, fictionally literally, since literal magic doesn't exist. The second kind of bard is the sort that aren't very good at playing music. These guys we call, wait for it, a distraction. Get them! Kill them all! While I have seen it done safely, I still believe bringing a musical instrument onto the LARP battlefield is a terrible idea. For one, most instruments aren't designed to take a hit or dish them out, and the instruments that can take a hit are a bit unwieldy or potentially damaging to foam weaponry. Now don't get me wrong, if you can aim away from someone's face in a LARP, then you can aim away from an instrument as well, but accidents do happen. If you must be a bard, I recommend you either be the singing poem type, or if you have an instrument, to use them in a non-battle area. But here's the thing, as a bard you don't have to sing alone. A bunch of knights is called an order, a group of rogues is called a gang, a group of wizards is called a bad idea, and a group of bards is called a band. So band together to make the best music, or, wait for it, a distraction. Get them! Kill them all! So now you know how to be a bard at LARP. You're welcome. Next week we have a real killer subject. Can you guess the topic? Wait for it. A distraction. Get them! Kill them all! Let's kill this LARP. Yeah. Professional killers of the fantasy worlds, these guys will kill kids while not being personal about it by saying, "Hey kid, nothing personal," and then shanking them. So get ready, because I'm going to show you how to get the edge in LARP. So to spell assassin right every time, you just have to say ass in. Oh hey, I didn't see you there until it was too late, just like a proper assassin. Now I've already touched upon them in the rogue video back in season 1, so I'll not repeat myself too much here, but to reiterate, a rogue, if you boil them down, is basically a sneaky character. An assassin, once again if you boil them down, is basically a sneaky character who kills people for money. If there wasn't any money involved, they'd be a serial killer. If they weren't being sneaky about it, they'd be normal mercenaries. And if they didn't kill people at all and just did it for the money, they'd be a thief. Frankly speaking, they're cut from a different cloth. Speaking of cloth, assassins are one of the few rogue types who leave a paper trail of their crimes behind in the form of contracts. Which is kind of odd if you think about it. Seriously, murder is against the law, right? So if you break an assassin contract as either the assassin or the hirer, what kind of lawyer is going to take up that case? Are assassins even legal in your setting? Now that I think about it, the people who'd make use of assassins are usually royalty, the sort who'd make the laws in the first place. So maybe assassins are legal in your universe. Morals and legality aside, there are a bunch of different flavors of assassins you might be able to choose in your LARP. The first, as I mentioned, are the stabby sorts who usually ambush their more armored prey or attack the mage before they are ready to cast. More often than not in a team-based setting, they're the ones dual-wielding and dealing a bunch of damage to the boss monster while everyone else keeps their attention and then runs away once said boss monster glances in their general direction. Then you have poisons. Generally speaking, poison is just another ability in combat-based LARPs that's applied through stabbings, making it fairly identical to the normal stabby type of assassin. However, occasionally you have a system that'll let you apply poisons through traps, drinks, and stickers. Sure, people can just ignore the poisons if no one else is looking, but like everything else in LARP, it's all honor-based anyways, which means it can only work if people play along as they should. Otherwise, why else are you at a LARP? Seriously, look up the Assassin game, which is basically LARPing without the roleplay part. If a bunch of college kids can focus long enough to run a proper game of Assassins, then clearly a bunch of non-college kids can probably focus enough to run a proper game of Assassin with roleplay, right? I mean, who do I gotta kill to make this happen? Which is the kind of question a real assassin should be asking. So now you know how to be an assassin in LARP. Nothing personal, kid. No clues for next week because I'm a secretive assassin. Bye-bye. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba, I'm LARPing it. Hot take. Food fights should not exist. Seriously, throwing away perfectly good food? What happens when you run out? You should at least keep something in reserve as a melee weapon once your ranged options have been spent. So get ready because I'm going to show you how to LARP with food. I tend to find that universal constants are constantly universal. Things like humanity wanting to play make-believe regardless of age is one such constant. Another example being food. Difference between the two is that we need food to not die, a weakness that must be purged from humanity. But until we can develop a way to implant perpetual motion machines into our stomachs, we still need to adhere to the laws of nature and physics and consume food even at LARP. In combat-based LARPs, eating food is kind of impractical. If you don't see athletes shoving pizzas down their throats while doing a 100-meter dash, you probably won't see a knight shoving ye old hot dogs down their gobs during a duel either. That sort of activity usually happens off the field, before or after each LARPing session. Sure, if there's a potion and a player wants to be super immersive, they'll drink it right then and there, but most LARPs dissuade people from doing this on the account of the potential of being attacked, surprised and choking on the beverage halfway through. So even the most roleplay oriented LARPs will be okay with people just pretending to eat and drink stuff. Speaking of roleplay oriented LARPs, sometimes going to a restaurant is the whole point of the game. In parallel LARPs, it's common for players to actually eat and drink at the venue, doing politically talky stuff as they do so. That said, combat-focused LARPs sometimes do this too, usually dropping the combat part of their LARP as a celebratory event, usually rocking up to the restaurant in their kit. Usually people are explicitly told that this is a diplomatic situation, so no violence sometimes, it's just hand-waved. Guys, no fighting, even if you're sworn enemies. Which turns it temporarily into a parallel LARP now that I think about it. As for food for outdoor LARPs in the wilderness, just look up camping food. It's more or less the same stuff unless you really want to be in character, I guess. In which case, roasting a hog can be a great group exercise. Double check your camping permits if you're allowed to do that though. Trust me when I say police arrests are one of the worst ways to end a LARP, only coming behind a literal murder or a meteor dropping down and killing everyone instantly. If you bring candy, and I can't believe I have to say this, make sure to pick up after yourself. A candy wrapper is small and light, so just like drama, take that rubbish off the field. Side tangent to people who like to make their own clothes and armor. Make sure to only test your stuff when you've eaten a meal. Just because you can fit into your suit of armor when you're starving doesn't mean you'll be able to do it when you're stuffed. Remember, it's easier to tighten a belt than it is to add a whole extra hole to it after all. So now you know how to do food at LARP. You're welcome. Next week we're talking about a buffet of topics. Can you guess what we'll be talking about in particular? Everybody in LARP, go put your hands up. Do you like miscellaneous tips and tricks? Do you want a part 2 of the first time I did that? Maybe? Yes? No? Well, either way, this is a dictatorship, so I get to decide what media you consume. It's about time I cobble together everything that can't make a full episode together again, so get ready because I'm going to show you how to LARP. Let's start at the beginning, something I should have addressed in episode 1. Character names. Coming up with names is hard, so try making it a pun, or spell another name or thing backwards, replacing a few letters to make it flow well. For example, if you have a character who likes to wander around, it could be Wanderer spelt backwards into Reridnor. Another example is a character who protects, and it could be a pun on warranty because he's got you covered, or Warren Teary. Either that or you can make a common no-nonsense name that doesn't require a diploma to pronounce, like Bob. In just about every combat-based LARP, getting hit is fairly normal, and because of that, so are hit points. If you're having trouble keeping track of your hit points upon being hit when counting down to 0, then try counting up instead. Human brains are dumb like that and usually find it easier to do addition rather than subtraction. Everyone's different, and while this method might not work for you, I now have at least made you aware of another option. Certain skills and abilities sometimes have a time limit or time requirement to use. Sure, you can literally count the seconds, but I prefer to sing! For example, one of the abilities in a LARP I attended required you to spend 10 seconds bandaging someone to heal them. So for that, I'd sing, "Bandage, bandage, bandage, I'm bandaging you up. Please do not bleed out and die upon the floor. Bandage complete." Check the time, 10 seconds. Oh yeah, I still got it. If you wear a helmet, be sure to take deep breaths. When you have something enclosing your head, the CO2 you breathe out can build up a bit. However, if you take a deep breath out, it can help flush it out through the gaps to give you a bit more breathing room. Coincidentally, the tiny holes in the front of your helmet is also called breaths. When wielding a sword, one of the most natural things you'll want to do with it is to stab it into the ground like a lot of people in movies do. This is a terrible idea. It'll damage the foam around your expensive foam sword. If you still want to do something like that, then try holding it by the blade and resting the handle down first. Speaking of swords, ensure they're LARP safe for the LARP you attend. Different LARPs have different safety standards when it comes to weaponry. Make sure you get pre-approved shopping lists before you drop hundreds of dollars on a warhammer you're not even allowed to bring onto the field of battle. One sword might be okay at one LARP, but not okay at another. Always check, never assume. assume. Here's one last piece of painful yet important advice. Nobody cares about your backstory. Okay, let me rephrase that. Nobody cares for the self-made audiobook that you call a backstory. Having a backstory is great and sharing can be an important part of the storytelling process, but if it slows down the game, then you're just monologuing. Remember, this isn't story time, it's LARPing time. So now you know how to LARP. You're welcome. Next week we're talking about leaders again, but in a different way. Can you guess the topic? LARP is the law, so take me deep inside. Remember that one episode where I talked about being a leader in charge of stuff? Well, besides running a guild, army, gang, or whatever you want to call your group, there's a meta sort of leader hiding behind the fourth wall. They're the owners of the LARP, the organizers, the game masters, and the script writers. So get ready, because I'm going to show you how to LARP behind the scenes, or in front of them, depending on the metaphor. There are many ways to run a LARP. In a game where there's mostly violence, the people who made the LARP can be fairly hands-off, only occasionally interjecting when rules require clarification or if someone is putting too much action into the action part of live-action roleplay. In these cases, the actual story and plot aren't touched much by the organizers. These sorts of LARPs are closer to sports, with the organizers acting as referees and the like. It's a bit impersonal, but it's clean and simple. Then there are games where the narrative requires a firmer grip, like murder mysteries, where specific events have to happen for the game to progress. In these cases, the participants sometimes don't even make their own characters, having to follow specific steps to advance the somewhat on-rails story. In this metaphor, the organizers are the conductors of the train, making sure no arms and legs are outside the ride, slowing down, speeding up, and stopping at each station according to schedule. A lot of roleplay-oriented games fall somewhere between these two extremes, usually describing how certain events, traps, and puzzles work when interacted with, and narrating certain story elements, sometimes even working with the NPCs and players to weave the lore. Regardless of the type of game, there's always a warden, referee, storyteller, or someone involved to help keep things moving along. Whether it's a social conflict, narrative roadblock, or a rules dispute, they're there to keep the game going. In the end, that's what these rule keeper types all have in common. They're there to keep the game going. To help identify them, most of these people who strut around on the field like they own the place usually wear bright fluoro safety vests. I don't know how common it is, but it seems like a good way to indicate someone is in a position of authority that can easily be flagged down in case you need them for clarification on something, rules or otherwise. Also, it makes them easy to avoid if you don't want their gaze to follow you and tip someone off to the fact that you're around to do something sneaky. So now you know about game masters, referees, and wardens. Oh my, you're welcome. Oi, foul! You have to comment, like, and subscribe. Rules are rules, no back talking to the referee. Come on! Now, I know that's a bit of a long shot to get people to comment, like, and subscribe, but you know what else is a long shot? The subject for next week. Can you guess the topic? It's the LARP shot. Ever since the dawn of time, we have always sought to stab stuff. First we invented the knife because our clubs were too blunt. Then we invented spears to stab things that were slightly further away. Then we invented arrows to stab things even more far away, though that only took off after we invented the bow. Yes, that's how history went down. I historically tell facts and therefore am a historian. So let's get ready because I'm going to show you how to stab people far away at LARP. Now I know I mentioned stabbing and it should really go without saying, but don't actually stab people with pointy objects. This is a LARP, so only pretend stabbings are allowed. Your average LARP arrow will have its pointy deadly tip replaced by a cushiony thing that'll turn a fatal stabbing into a long-range bop. Not only that, but most bows can only be used if they have a maximum poundage limit, pull limit, or draw weight. Actual wording may vary, but you're essentially setting your bows from kill to stun. Now, an actual archer in real life might already own a bow, and in theory could bring it to their local LARPs with the modified arrow tips and power adjustments. With their pre-trained skills, they could be a real terror on the foam sword battlefields. The only problem is that at most LARPs, you can't aim for people's faces and therefore can't arc your shots to go over their shields, making archers against certain enemies, groups, and situations, well, they put themselves at a great disadvantage. Sure, you can aim at their legs, and many do this, but a quick adjustment of said shield usually covers that vulnerability. A lot of LARPs compensate by making arrows hit for more damage, because otherwise they're kinda screwed, especially if your LARP has special attacks and spells. For example, if a swordsman uses a special move, they just have to yell out the name of their attack and strike. Should be easy enough to hear someone yell from sword swinging distance, right? A mage with a foam ball also has to yell out the spell's name and then hit someone. It's harder to hear, sure, but mages are nerds and all nerds can't throw far, so we're sure to hear them when they shout. An archer, on the other hand, they have to yell out their attack's name from arrow distance. Power shot! What? I said power shot! What? Power shot! Piece of what? Oh, screw it! Twang! Ow! I've just been hit by a regular shot for regular damage. You son of a... In conclusion, if you're an archer, then bring a backup weapon, at which point you stop being an archer and just a warrior who occasionally shoots people. So now you know how to take your shot in LARP. You're welcome. Next week we'll be talking about something that might be controversial. At least in a fantasy setting. Maybe? Can you guess the topic? Who's larping you?
Hello, fellow humans. As weak, fleshy meatbags, we dream of being more. Sometimes we dream of being other inferior meatbags that are somehow less inferior to the ones we are in reality. So get ready, because I'm going to show you how to LARP as a different kind of meatbag.
In most fantasy universes, humans are usually considered the most average race around, neither excelling nor lacking in any specific aspect. In others, we have the most drive and ambition, trying to accomplish more in the short lifespan that we have and becoming the main characters for just that reason. Or something special soul and plot armor. Either way, it means there's almost no reason to specifically be a human in most LARPs, at least from a mechanical point of view. Elves have sharper senses, which are sometimes represented by the ability to see invisible enemies. Orcs are stronger, thus given the ability to hit harder with their attacks. Dwarves are tougher and get more HP. Honestly, if your LARP is lazy enough and there are too many races to count, catalog, and make mechanical balance changes for, then they'll just give a universal HP bonus or quicker respawn speed to any non-human characters. For those that want to still include relatively unique bonuses and traits, some LARPs will give a list of player-only races that can be played. Sure, dragons might exist in the universe, but are relegated to the realms of NPCs and background characters. Another solution is to categorize and group some of these races and give bonuses based on that. Long-lived races get an extra skill point, while tougher races get more hit points and strong ones hit harder. Honestly, the lure of playing other races are so strong that some people are more than happy to roleplay all the associated weaknesses without actually getting any of the bonuses if the system doesn't support said mechanical bits. Like a vampire who can't be in sunlight, avoids garlic, and gets cross with crosses even if the rulebook doesn't tell them to do all that stuff. Dwarves, gnomes, and halflings aren't really easy to insert in LARP. If you want to be an elf, you add ears, orcs add green skin, and lizard people add tails which come off and regrow when they're threatened. For all the short races, it's hard to take away leg length, so most of these characters are either played by already short people like kids, or sometimes by normal people who claim to have drunk a giant's growth potion. So why play a human then? Now, I could tell you it's because they're the race we most identify with, that humans having so much drive can create a character who will want to do the most stuff in the world of your LARP. I could even tell you that people do it as an in-character decision to show that they are the most populous race in that universe. But the real reason why we play humans is because we're lazy and don't want to actually spend time putting on makeup, sticking in fake teeth, or gluing 2 ears onto our actual ears. So now you know about the different races in LARP and why you're probably going to end up choosing a vanilla human despite every other available flavor. You're welcome. Next week, the finale. We've been through a lot together, you and I, and we're going to help finish up together. Post-heart, post-break, post-LARP, post-hate. In the first season finale, I spoke about character death. In Season 2's finale, I covered boss fights. Both topics had something to do with endings. So what thematically appropriate topic have I chosen for Season 3? Well, I've decided to be slightly more meta this time and end things by teaching you what happens after the game, what we do post-LARP. So get ready, because we're going to show you how to LARP at the finish line. Now, I know some people say this a lot, but it's very important to hammer it into your thick skulls. LARP at its very core is a social activity that can't survive without its community. In a lot of cases, some people just go home after LARP to rest up after a full day of swinging foam swords, casting spells, and tripping over tree roots because fuck tree roots. Some people, however, breathe, eat, and live LARP and continue doing stuff for themselves and the community in between sessions, like making videos, crafting armor, looking stuff up online for ideas on how to craft armor in the first place, and failing that, just going online to buy whatever they were trying to craft in the first place. Sometimes they'll leave and work on an in-character letter that reflects the events of the session, or upload all those fancy photos they took of everyone for that game. However, what immediately follows LARP in some cases is what me and many of my local community call the emu walk. So for those of you who don't know, an emu is a large bipedal bird similar to an ostrich, local to Australia that... Okay, that's not relevant. Let's roll it back a bit. An emu walk is when everyone gets into a line shoulder to shoulder, at which point the organizers will yell at everyone to spread out more because people are terrible at following directions. After a bit more finagling, everybody looks down and starts walking, sweeping the field of battle for rubbish, stray arrows, and other pieces of lost equipment to help leave the area as they found it. Usually any tables or tents set up at this point would have already either been put away or put aside with all the other required admin stuff needed to have everyone start the game in the first place. Just watch out for the fucking tree roots. Another thing people like to do after LARP is that they like to stick around the venue for a bit longer, catching up on all of that out-of-character talk and gossip. Hey buddy, how's the baby? What baby? Sometimes they'll be gushing about in-character events that just happened. It was so cool when you stopped that cultist from stabbing the baby. What baby? Sometimes people will have to leave ASAP because their ride is here and they don't want to walk home or inconvenience the person who offered them the drive. Get in the car, baby. What baby? However, one of the most common things I've seen is the after LARP still in costume junk food feast at the local fast food joint activity, aka the ALSICJFFATLFFJA, or the ALSICJFA for short. Everybody loves a good ALSICJFA. To explain what this ALSICJFA is, everybody just rocks up, still in their armor, robes, and fantasy outfits at their local sugary, salt-laden grease traps and just gorge themselves. In the course of ordering their food and the actual gorging, they also do the talking thing I mentioned before. Baby, I love this burger. What baby? But everyone is different, and to prove the point, here are a bunch of testimonials, aka people I asked on Discord so I wouldn't have to keep writing this script. Umarel Fireseeker says, "Park up, talk to everyone about what was done well, their favorite moments, etc., etc. Then, as I'm an organizer, I usually go home and make up some sort of survey / do minor rules changes. Oh, and also everyone eats any uneaten food. Brackets. We eat in character, so we can't always eat between fighting. End brackets. Please send me the video when you're done if possible. Smiley face." Will do, buddy. I will definitely send you this video afterwards. Next up, we have someone named Toadstool Tarts. I hope that's how you pronounce it. And they say, "It depends on the game I'm going to. I just got home from Larping like 10 minutes ago, but after game of today, I checked out, cleaned out my cabin, and went to crack a barrel with my group. In brackets, there's one like 10 minutes from the campsite, so it's a bit of a tradition for us to go there after a game. End brackets. After that, I went home. I usually take an hour or two to chill and decompress, and then try to make sure my pal is finished by the end of the night so I do not forget anything." Just a quick note, a PEL, as referred here, or PEL, is a post-event letter. Think of it as a feedback form for LARP, usually covering in-character events and what they do outside the events covered in the LARP itself. It was sort of referenced by Umarel Fireseer above, and as always, there's a bit more to it than that, but I'm trying to keep this video short to match my attention span. Finally, I'm going to rest my vocal cords by playing a snippet from another fellow LARPing YouTuber. As in a YouTuber who LARPs, not a LARPer who only roleplays that they're a YouTuber.
And then the in-game hours have passed, and someone will yell, "Time out!"
Okay, this is taking too long. I don't have this kind of attention span. Wait, this goes on for another 2 whole minutes? This whole video is over 10 minutes! Okay, how does she know so much about life that she can talk about it for over 10 minutes in a single video? Okay, I'm calling it. I'm cutting this short before she shows me up any more than she already has.
But if you do have that kind of attention span, you can check out the full video after this one in the link comment below.
What the? Mara's Armory? What are you doing here? Don't you think about even saying another word. I'm way too lazy to animate your lips any more than I already have. I mean, why do you think I wear a helmet? Shoot, scat, get out of here. Stop making me look bad. In the end, Larp is different for everyone. No matter how much you know, there's always more to learn. So that's the final episode. That's what we do post-Larp. And now, very soon, we're going to be doing stuff after this season because, just like any good Larp session, this episode and season has to end. I'm going to leave, decompress, have some fatty food, and make videos about other stuff now. So now you finally know how to LARP in all things. You're welcome.